It's Monday morning, March 2nd, 2026. You wake up, grab your keys, and head to the Chevron station on your way to work. Same one you've stopped at every morning for 3 years. You pull up to the pump, tap your credit card, and start filling the tank of your Honda Civic. The price per gallon reads $3.18. That's maybe 20 cents more than last week. You notice it, you don't love it, but you swipe the card, fill the tank, and drive off. You've got a 9 a.m. meeting, you don't have time to think about why. Tell me if this sounds familiar. That same night, you're sitting on the couch, scrolling through the news. You see the headlines: strikes on Iran, the Strait of Hormuz, oil tankers stranded in the Gulf. It looks like something out of a history book, something happening in a part of the world you couldn't point to on a map. You close the app, you order DoorDash, life goes on. Here's the thing nobody told you. That 20 cents you paid at the pump this morning, that's not random. That's not bad luck. That's not the oil companies being greedy. At least not just that. That's the war. And here's what's going to blow your mind. You've been paying a war tax your entire adult life, long before February 28, 2026, long before the first missile hit Tehran. The mechanism has been running in the background for decades, quietly pulling money out of your wallet, and most people have absolutely no idea it exists. Let me show you exactly how it works, what it's already costing you right now, and, most importantly, what you can actually do about it. Here's what most people get completely wrong about war and your finances. They think it goes like this. War happens over there, soldiers fight, politicians debate, and the economy back home keeps rolling. Maybe gas gets a little more expensive for a while, then things go back to normal. That's what most financial gurus tell you too. Just ride it out, stay the course, don't panic. But that advice ignores something absolutely critical. It ignores what Linda Bilmes, a senior lecturer at Harvard Kennedy School and one of the leading public finance experts in the country, calls the war debt trap. The basic idea is this. Every time the United States goes to war, it doesn't raise taxes to pay for it. It borrows the money. It puts the war on a credit card. And just like your credit card bill, the interest keeps growing for decades, long after the war itself is over. And here's the part that should make you furious. You are the one holding that bill. Bilmes, together with Nobel Prize-winning economist Joseph Stiglitz from Columbia University, spent years analyzing the true cost of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. What they found was devastating. The Bush administration told the public in 2003 that the Iraq war would cost between $50 and $60 billion, and quick in-and-out operation, done in months. The actual cost? According to Brown University's Costs of War Project, the most comprehensive academic study of U.S. war spending, the post-9/11 wars will ultimately cost American taxpayers $8 trillion. Let me put that in human terms. There are roughly 160 million taxpayers in the United States. That means those wars that most Americans stopped thinking about years ago, have cost every single taxpayer approximately $50,000 each. Not the government, not some abstract entity, you. And now, on March 3, 2026, as U.S. and Israeli forces are 3 days into Operation Epic Fury against Iran, as the Strait of Hormuz sits at a virtual standstill, as tanker traffic has dropped to near zero, the meter is running again. This is where most people miss the real story. They watch the news and think this is a geopolitical event, something happening to someone else. But here's what actually happens. Every single war this country has fought in the last 25 years has followed the exact same playbook. And that playbook is designed, not by accident, not through incompetence, to make you pay the bill without ever knowing you're paying it. They call it national security. The economists at Brown University call it the war debt trap. I call it the war tax you're already paying. Let's start with what's happening right now, because the numbers are already moving. Before the strikes on February 28th, the national average price for a gallon of regular unleaded gas was $2.98. Then Operation Epic Fury started. By Monday, March 2nd, West Texas Intermediate crude jumped 6.3% in a single day. Brent crude surged nearly 9%, hitting $79.31 per barrel. Ken Medlock, Senior Director at the Center for Energy Studies at Rice University's Baker Institute, every $10 increase in oil per barrel translates to roughly 25 cents more per gallon at the pump. The average American drives about 12,000 miles per year. At 28 miles per gallon, that's roughly 428 gallons annually. At $2.98 per gallon, $1,276 per year. If oil hits $90 per barrel, add 50 cents per gallon, $1,490 per year. If oil hits $100 per barrel, add 75 cents per gallon, $1,597 per year. The difference, $321 more per year, $26.75 more per month, 88 cents every single day. That's not a typo. But here's where it gets really interesting, because gas is just the beginning. Even if you don't own a car, you are absolutely not immune to this. Diesel futures surged nearly 12% in a single day after the strikes began. And according to oil analyst Andrew Lipo, president of Lipo Will Associates, higher freight costs, higher airline fuel bills, higher distribution expenses. Corporate margins tighten or prices rise. Often both. Mark Zondi, chief economist at Moody's Analytics, found that every sustained 1-cent increase in the price of a gallon of gas increases total American consumer spending on gasoline by $1.4 billion per year. Read that again. 1 cent, $1.4 billion per year. Most people see 20 cents at the pump and think annoying. They don't see the $28 billion that just disappeared from American consumers' pockets. In March 2003, Vice President Dick Cheney told Meet the Press the Iraq War would cost about $80 billion. Quick, clean, done. Here's what actually happened. $80 billion, initial estimate, to $1.47 trillion in direct Pentagon spending, per U.S. Department of Defense data, to $134 billion in medical and disability claims for veterans by 2013 alone, to $2.2 trillion in future veterans' care obligations, Brown University Costs of War Project, to $1 trillion plus in interest on borrowed war funds, to $4 to $6 trillion total per Harvard Kennedy School. They told you $80 billion. The bill came to $6 trillion. And the interest alone on these wars is projected to reach $6.5 trillion by 2050, even if war spending had theoretically stopped in 2019. Your kids will still be paying interest on the Iraq War in 2050. Per taxpayer, according to a Department of Defense report mandated by Congress, the wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria cost every single U.S. taxpayer approximately $8,000 in direct military spending alone. That's before veterans' care. That's before interest. That's before the economic drag from higher oil prices during those years. That's not a typo either. Here's a number I want you to sit with. 20 million barrels of oil per day. That's how much crude passes through the Strait of Hormuz, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration. That's approximately 20% of all the oil consumed on planet Earth every single day, flowing through a waterway that is 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. As of March 3, 2026, that strait is at a virtual standstill. Over 150 tankers are anchored in open waters. Maersk and Hapag-Lloyd have suspended all transits. Insurance companies have pulled coverage. Ali Vaez, director of the Iran project at the International Crisis Group, closure of the Strait of Hormuz would disrupt roughly a fifth of globally traded oil overnight, and prices wouldn't just spike, they would gap upward violently on fear alone. If oil hits $100 per barrel, gas prices $3.50 a gallon nationally. Diesel follows, trucking surcharges on every product you buy. Natural gas prices surge, 20% of global LNG flows through the same strait. Heating costs spike for Northeast U.S. households. A 2010 study by Daniel Kahneman and Angus Deaton from Princeton University, analyzing 450,000 survey responses, found that Americans' day-to-day emotional well-being is tightly linked to purchasing power. Every time the cost of living rises without a corresponding rise in wages, people feel it psychologically as well as financially. But here's what almost nobody is covering right now. January 2026. Before a single missile was fired, the Producer Price Index, a measure of wholesale costs, came in at plus 0.8% month over month. The 12-month rate was already at 3.6%, well above the Fed's 2% target. The Institute for Supply Management, over 70% of manufacturing managers reported paying higher prices in February, an 11.5 percentage point jump from the prior month. Translation: inflation was already re-accelerating before Operation Epic Fury. Now layer the war on top. Joseph Bruce-Willis, chief economist at RSM, a $10 increase in oil prices translates to roughly a 0.2 percentage point rise in inflation and a 0.1 percentage point drag on GDP growth. And the Federal Reserve was expected to cut interest rates at its June 2026 meeting. Those cuts would lower mortgage rates and car loan rates for millions of Americans. War-driven inflation could now push the Fed to hold or raise. Adam Hetz, global head of multi-asset at Janus Henderson, an uptick in the U.S. inflation rate could lead the Federal Reserve to hold off in acting to lower interest rates. The math on that: average American, 30-year mortgage, $350,000 home. At 6.5% rate, $2,212 a month. At 7%, if Fed delays or raises, $7,329 a month. The difference? $117 a month, $1,404 a year. Just from one interest rate decision, influenced by a war in the Middle East. That's the gas pump. That's the grocery store. That's your mortgage. And most people have no idea these things are connected. This is where I get genuinely frustrated. Because here's the thing. None of this is an accident. This isn't bad luck. This isn't the unavoidable cost of keeping America safe. And it is absolutely not your fault that you've been paying a war tax for 25 years without knowing it. The system is designed to work exactly this way. Linda Bilmes documented it at Harvard. She calls it the ghost budget. Every American war from the Revolution through Vietnam was paid for with taxes. Truman raised top marginal taxes to 92% for Korea. Roosevelt raised them above 90% for World War II. Johnson raised them to 77% for Vietnam. Then something changed. When the post-9/11 wars began, Congress didn't raise taxes, they cut them by roughly 8% for the wealthiest Americans, and they paid for the wars entirely through debt. The system relies on your not doing this math. Defense companies, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, are already seeing their stock prices rise. The people who invested in those companies are making money right now. Meanwhile, you're paying more at the pump. They budget for your confusion. They depend on your not connecting the gas price to the strike on Tehran. They bank on the fact that by the time inflation shows up in your grocery bill, you'll have forgotten about the Strait of Hormuz. Here's what really gets me. In 2003, they told you $80 billion. It cost $6 trillion. In 2026, nobody is telling you what this will cost. But based on every historical pattern we have, from Brown University's data, from Harvard's research, from the IMF and the Congressional Budget Office, the bill will be paid over decades by the people least able to afford it. Mark Zondi, Moody's Analytics, higher gasoline prices have an outsized impact because it hurts consumer sentiment, and it's particularly hard on lower-income households that spend a higher share of their budget on gas. You're not bad with money for feeling the pressure. You're not financially irresponsible for struggling with rising costs. You're human, living inside a system specifically designed to put the cost of war on a credit card and hand you the bill years later, while making it nearly impossible to trace where the charges came from. In 5 years, people who understand this mechanism will be in a fundamentally different financial position than those who don't. That's not an opinion. That's the lesson of every American war for the last 25 years. So what do you actually do with all of this? The answer is not panic and sell everything. That's almost always the wrong move, and it's exactly what the volatility is designed to make you do. The answer is not wait for it to blow over either. Because Goldman Sachs wrote in a research note this week, conflict-driven surges in gold come and go, though geopolitical risks broadly are likely to stay on the boil. The answer is to understand the mechanism and position yourself intelligently within it. Strategy 1. The inflation fortress. War drives inflation. Inflation destroys purchasing power. If your savings are sitting in a low-interest account earning 2.5% while inflation runs at 3.6%, you are losing money, mathematically, in real terms. I-bonds, TIPS, Treasury inflation-protected securities, and high-yield savings accounts that actually track the Fed rate are instruments designed to keep pace with inflation. This isn't complicated. It's structural protection that most people never set up because nobody told them they needed it. Strategy 2. The energy hedge. The U.S. is now the world's largest oil producer. When oil prices go up globally, even due to a war in the Middle East, American oil companies make more money. If you already hold a broad S&P 500 index fund, energy represents roughly 4% of that index. In the week following major oil price spikes historically, energy stocks have risen 8 to 15% while the broader market pulled back. Your portfolio is already partially hedging itself. You just need to know it. Let's say you have $10,000 in an S&P index fund. That's roughly $400 in energy exposure. A 10% spike in energy stocks while the broader market drops 1% means your energy allocation gains $40 while the rest loses $96. You're not neutral to war, but you're not as exposed as someone holding no equity at all. Debt defense. If the Federal Reserve holds rates or raises them, every dollar of variable rate debt you carry gets more expensive. Credit cards, adjustable rate mortgages, variable home equity lines. Paying down a 22% APR credit card balance is a guaranteed 22% return on every dollar you put toward it. No investment in any market can reliably beat that. In a rising rate environment, debt destruction is your highest return move. Strategy 4 is the awareness advantage. Most people are about to spend the next 4 weeks watching news coverage of the Iran conflict without ever connecting it to their personal finances. They'll feel the price increase at the pump, get frustrated, and move on. You now understand the actual mechanism. You understand the Strait of Hormuz. You understand the debt playbook. You understand how inflation interacts with interest rates and mortgage costs. That knowledge between you and the average person is worth thousands of dollars over time, not because of any single decision, but because of the dozens of small financial decisions that compound differently when you understand the system you're living inside. Look, I won't lie to you and say this is easy. The system is genuinely stacked against ordinary Americans in ways that take real effort to navigate. It took Harvard economists years to document what I just walked you through in 20 minutes. You're not broken for feeling the financial pressure of a war you didn't vote for. The question isn't whether the war affects your wallet. The question is whether you understand it well enough to protect yourself. If this video changed how you see the connection between global events and your personal finances, if you realized you've been paying a war tax without ever knowing it, do me a favor and share this with someone who needs to hear it. We don't talk about this stuff enough.